Listen to me. So many men or husbands will say women are difficult beings. Some will say God regretted creating humans after he created the first woman. Some men, in their extreme opinion, will say, but for having and raising children, God shouldn't have created women at all. Someone will also say that a man can't understand women because you cannot understand what was created when you were asleep. Others will say only the woman has had face-to-face discussion with the devil and no one can break their alliance. These are very sensitive words some men have used to describe women when their relationships with their wives break down. The question is this: do women really qualify for this description? Are women really difficult? What is the definition of difficult? How then can we deal with women we regard as difficult? I welcome you to this edition of our Mentoring Masterclass. Today I am speaking on why we divorced our wives, part 1. Now, it is important to approach this topic with sensitivity and avoid stereotypes and generalization. Difficulties in marriage can arise for different reasons, and they can be experienced by any spouse, regardless of gender. In my research for what make men regard women as difficult, I got about 25 responses, and I put everything together which I desire to read to you. And after this, in part 2, I will be reading the women defenses on what men say about difficulties in women. Let me read this to you. 1. Tunde in Lagos said, if my wife no longer respects me, doesn't support or believe me, and consistently treats me poorly, it might be time to reconsider the relationship. Respect and mutual support are foundational to a healthy marriage. I am separated from my wife because she is an embodiment of disrespect. I can't stick it. Even before I got married to her, I saw that in her mother. That woman talks anyhow to her husband. Her marriage broke down a year into my marriage to her daughter. 5 years later, my marriage also broke down. That is why our elders say, if you want to know how your wife will be in old age, go and check her mother. I confidently say that a woman who comes from a broken home is likely to also have a broken home. Tell your followers to be careful with women who come from broken homes. Number 2, this is from Dele in Benin City. When a man finds himself constantly begging for his wife's attention, love, and intimacy, or if a man feels he has to offer financial incentive to get his wife's attention, the relationship is becoming toxic. A loving relationship should not require a man to plead for basic emotional or physical connections. That marriage has become toxic. That was what happened to me. Number 3, Edith Nkado said, I could no longer trust her due to excessive lying, secretive behavior, or maintaining inappropriate relationship. It signals a serious problem. She will tell me she was going to see her parents in Kaduna, and my friends will tell me they saw her in Abuja. I thought only we men were permitted to cheat. I never knew women also cheat. It was a rude shock for me to discover. I call it quit 3 years into my marriage. Number 4, Duke in Port Harcourt said, persistent criticism and aggression put me off. When my first wife began to find faults in everything I did and say, and things that were once insignificant to us suddenly become major issues, I realized something was fishy. I've been drinking beer before marrying her. Why make a fuss of it now? As a matter of fact, we met in a beer parlor run by her mother. I married a girl raised in a beer parlor by a beer selling mother. I was blind because of her pointed breast and 8-figure 8 that time. We had to end it. Number 5, Talabi in Ilori said, emotional and physical abuse are clear signs that a woman is ready to leave the relationship. If she becomes violent and destructive, a man should prioritize his safety. Abusive behavior is never acceptable, and staying in such a relationship can have severe long-term consequences on your well-being. I am a pastor. I can tell you that my wife slaps me at will. I thought it was men who beat their wife. No, until I got married that I knew that women also beat men. The worst part of my experience is that my ex blackmailed me because she felt as a general overseer of a church, I wouldn't be able to ask for divorce or separation. If I tell you what we pastors go through in the hands of our wives, if I tell you the pains my pastor friend go through because their wife feel they can do and undo, after all, he can't talk or quit the marriage, you will be shocked. Most pastors keep quiet and bear because they don't want their ministries to collapse or people to have a bad impression of them. It was not until my case that I stopped blaming or criticizing pastors whose marriages collapse. Some pastors have been bold to call it quits openly. Number 6, Pastor Dan in Lagos. I am a pastor. In my own case, my wife knew I had a child before marrying her, even before the Lord called me into the ministry. She knew the girl and her mother. She told me to bring her home, but at that time, her mother would not release her, and I didn't want any trouble, so I let the status quo be. Years later, the woman died, and I intended to bring the child home. My wife started her wahala. I couldn't spend on that daughter. She couldn't come to my house. My wife raised enemies for her in the church. Whenever she came to church, she ensured the protocols would not allow her to see me. She ensured the 3 children she bore for me became enemies with my daughter. If my wife knew I would go to see her, wahala. I called her many times to ask her, why was she like this? And why she had this hatred for her. She said it's because she is a Muslim. I said, Muslim? And so what? Who told you she could not become a Christian tomorrow? Why this hatred for Islam? Is this what Jesus taught us? Do you know what I am doing on my own to get her converted to Christianity? Can we make people love Jesus by hating them? My wife created great instability in my ministry to such an extent that she was telling people who cared to hear that I was an adulterer, a fornicator, that I had girlfriends. My wife will call the associate pastor and start blasting them, telling them not to follow my footsteps. She will insist she has to preach on Sunday or anytime she likes. Even when another person was slated to preach, there was this Sunday, she walked to the altar and struggled to collect the microphone from one of the associate pastors. The man walked away quietly. Some people left the church that Sunday. Thank God that my founding members of the church knew my story even before the church started. These were the people God used to shield me from her. They walked her out of the church and told her they would discipline her when next they find her in the church. They all knew what I was suffering. Some wives of the elders and deaconesses were the ones who assisted us to pack her loads out of my house. Even some women she took as allies. They all said it was too much for her to mount the altar and be fighting for microphone. I did not say a word that Sunday. They wiped off all her loads from my house, put them outside. I slept in the church for 3 days. She went away with her children. That was when my daughter now came in. Because of the love the church showed her, she became a Christian and took the name Mary. My daughter is married today and doing well in the US as a medical doctor. All the music instruments we are using in our 5 parishes in Lagos, she's bought them. In fact, 2 of my ex-wife children are now with her in the United States. This is my daughter she hated badly. They live with her. All this happened about 15 years ago. She is now making efforts to come back to me. It's too late, and God has not put any blame or sin on me. Thank you, Dr. Bola, for what you are doing with Mentoring Masterclass. Number 7, this is from Michael in Lagos. But I was dating Foluke since our university days in Agowoyi. I didn't even know she was older than me until she took in during our NYSC days. Before I knew it, she was pregnant the following year. 3rd year or 4th year, she had another one. 3 children in about 4 years for an unemployed father, despite my insistence to her to always take precautions so that she will not get pregnant. It was later that I found out that it was all a game plan just to have all she needed in a few years from the same father and become a single mother. After all, her parents were rich. They don't really need me to cater for the children. I hardly see my children all the time with her parents. I was just like a sperm donor. As a young graduate, I got no job, and our people were not ready to help me despite their promises. Not to be a gigolo, I left Ibadan for Lagos to hustle, and Foluke didn't care. After a stage, I never knew where she was. She packed out of her house, and I went to her family house at Bodija. They told me they didn't know me and that I should go and bring our marriage certificate to prove that I was married to their daughter. Weeks later, she blocked me on her phone. I went on with my life. All she was telling everyone was that I was a lazy man. I didn't want to work. In 2016, I actually had relocated to the US with the children. I have no access to my children since 2018. Only God knows how she must have poisoned the minds of these children against me. This is what Yoruba people call a teobini. Today, I am doing very well in Lagos, as you can see yourself. I am remarried and have 2 children. Me, that they said I was lazy. Me, that they said I should go and bring marriage certificate to prove that I was married to their daughter. God has changed my story. My new wife is doing very well and God has blessed me. Concerning those children abroad, when we get to that bridge, we will cross it. Number 8, this is from Aliko in Zaria. I am separated from my first wife because I married the second wife. She said she will not allow a second wife. She is a Muslim and knows that as a Muslim, I am entitled to it, and I can even marry 3 to 4. My father had 6 wives. Her own father had 4. So what is her problem? Always antagonistic and confrontational. She had 2 children for me. The fact is this: if you are married to a Muslim, be ready for multiple wives if your husband desires it. If you are married to a kinship family and your husband is in the line, be prepared for multiple wives. Trying to stop Muslim from marrying other wives is useless if he desires to have more. I had thought her education as a university graduate will enlighten her better. A graduate of political science from ABU Zaria, behaving as an illiterate. That is why educating women in the north is often frowned upon, because it goes into their brain and they begin to see their husbands as their houseboy. I thought education should make people easier to govern, not these Bauchi girls. Many of them have open eye. All she does now is to make the children hate me, telling them all manner of negative stories about me. Thank God they are boys. When they grow up, they will understand why their daddy chose to be a man in his house. She is back in Bauchi with her Shengantaka. I am happily married here in Zaria. I'm planning for the next wife. I can feed them and take care of them. And if they don't even work, they will live even better. I guess what made Memuna that wild was her relationship with these Yoruba and Igbo girls in the NGO where she works. They influenced her wrongly. If I talk 1, she will talk 2, she will talk 3. The day she tried to slap me was her final day in my house. I threw her load and her children out to Gabadaya. Slap your husband. You can do that nonsense in the south, not here in the north. Women should be seen and not be heard. It is against Islam that a woman will rule over her husband. Gaskia. Number 9, Leke in Shagam. I resolved to separate from my wife because I found out that I couldn't forgive her at the time. Each time I saw her around me, she was irritating to me. After she said she had been born again, she was encouraged by her pastor to confess her sin to me. What did she do? She slept with my uncle to get money from him when I had a case in court and I was locked up for 2 months. The lawyer said they had to settle the magistrate to free me. She was asked to produce 500,000 naira. We had nothing. The human rights people stepped in. I guess she didn't know that other people were also fighting for me. She went everywhere to no avail. When she met my uncle, a randy man, one thing led to the other, and in her desperation to raise 500,000, she agreed to sleep with the man, and the man gave her the money. The day she got the money, the human rights lawyer secured my release. When she got to court to see the lawyers, I was already a free man. She was shocked. She kept the money, and I guess the guilt drove her to become a born again. Her pastor told her to confess to me. It was a mistake of her life. I was not born again and not ready to brook that. That was 25 years ago, just before Obasanjo became the president. It led to a big rumpus in the family. The uncle became ashamed and died in a motor accident 2 years after I drove her out of my house. With the power of hindsight, I guess I shouldn't have done that. I was in my early 40s. I should have forgiven her, but the jealousy of the youthful era made me do all I did that time. Number 10, this is from Wale in London. I caught her having an affair. Divorce was inevitable once I figured out that she was only sorry she got caught. When she had a phone call, she would pick it up and walk away, either outside or much away from me. She would be speaking quietly. She was doing this right in my presence. There was a day I met her with a man in ShopRite, Lagos. Immediately she saw me, she was shocked and wanted to start explaining. I just walked past and went home. When she came, her loads were already outside. She didn't even complain or protest. I wouldn't know how she packed her load from my compound that night. This is the 7th year and I am remarried. But I now see that once a man is divorced, it is difficult to get it right again. It is better we get married to the right person from the onset. Now, these were the responses I got from men. To balance this up, we also sent a questionnaire to about 50 to 70 women to react to these claims that women are difficult species. I will present the women's responses in part 2 of this lecture, which will come in about 2 or 3 days' time. If you like to have that part 2, send me a yes on this number on your screen on WhatsApp. God be with you. Bye.